Hello, welcome to Quantum Online Academy. This is your Dr. Nagaraju Pendam. In this video, we have to discuss about one more important current thing that is belongs to the current affairs, science and technology. What is that? Once you have to see generation of beta. Generation of beta, beta generation. What is the beta generation? Once we have to see. Now 2025 onwards, who were born, those people we have to call it as a beta generation. They are working with artificial intelligence, they are very fast. How? Once you have to see, meet India's first generation beta baby, a boy born in Mizoram's Aizawl. A boy born in Mizoram's Aizawl, meet India's first generation beta baby. So, first generation beta baby entered into the India, where entered in Mizoram, Aizawl. Once you have to see, India welcomes its first generation beta baby, Generation beta, India got its first baby of this generation on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2025. January 1st, 2025 in Mizoram's capital Aizawl. So, in Aizawl, one baby born January 1st, 2025. That baby is the first baby of beta. So, the baby named Frankie Rembrianthica Janded. Frankie Rembrianthica Jandeng. Frankie Rembrianthica Jandeng is recognized as a India's first child from so-called generation beta, born in Aizawl, Mizoram in India. Generation beta, a term denoting children born between 25 to 39, up to the 39 were born in that generation we call it as a generation beta. They will grow up in a world with advanced artificial intelligence. They will grow up in the world with the advanced artificial intelligence. The term generation beta was coined by Australian futurist Mark McCrindle introduced this term, that is the generation beta, to describe the demographic cohort succeeding generation alpha. What is the generation alpha? 2010 to 2024, this generation we call it as a generation alpha. Generation Z, born between the 95 to 2009, they are also known as a I generation, because they grow up with the iPhone. That's why this generation we call it as a I generation, that generation 95 to 2009. Millennials, also known as a generation Y, they were born between 1980 to 1994. Millennials, they were the first generation to come of age in the new millennium. So, that is why this generation we call it as a millennials or generation Y. Generation X, born between the 1965 to 1980, they grow up during a time of economic uncertainty and cultural upheaval. So, that is why that generation we call it as a generation X. So, baby boomers, born between the 1946 to 1964, this generation experienced the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War and the moon landing, all the things they faced. That is why these people we call it as a baby boomers. Now, once you have to see generation name and birth years, the greatest generation 1901 to 1927, that generation we call it as a greatest generation. The silent generation 1928 to 1948, we call it as a silent generation. Baby boom generation is 1946 to 1964, that generation we call it as a baby boom generation. Generation X is the 1965 to 1980, millennial generation, that is generation Y, we call it as a 1981 to 1996. Generation Z, that generation we also call it as a I generation, that is 1997 to 2010. Generation Alpha, so what is that generation? Once you have to see 2010 to 2024, that generation we call it as a alpha generation. Generation Beta, so where it is a this 2020-25 to 2039, that generation we call it as a generation Beta. So up to the 2020-25 to up to 2039 were born, those people we call it as a generation Beta. So these generations are very very fast, they will use with the artificial intelligence. So that's why this generation we call it as a generation Beta. Who introduced this one? A Australian futurist, his name is Mark McCrindle. Mark McCrindle, a futurist, is an Australian futurist, introduced this name generation Beta. Generation Beta, so succeeded of generation Alpha. That generation Alpha years are 2010 to 2024. So please remember all these things, because these are the advanced things. Once you have to learn, it will come in your competitive examination. Please share and subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.